Yes, so what I wanted to show you today is a little about how you can actually automate your SAP migration. And as I can hear on at least two of you, you have, or your clients have a 731 system and needs to migrate to 7.5 in the new year. And I think that is where the Figaf tool really will be able to help, because it has a lot of the capabilities to do that. You may have seen my post yesterday, where I was showing what we're doing and giving some insights about that it will probably become some Paw Patrol ideas on it. Let's see how much I get from those. But the idea is that I just want to cover why you need to upgrade to 7.5. And then the big question is, do you want to upgrade or migrate? And obviously, let's see there. And then I'll show you what we can actually do with automation and why it makes a lot of sense. So the SAP roadmap, and I guess this still is the same as the last year. At least support of 731, 7.1 to 7.4 ends in 2020, and as I understand it, it's not possible to extend support beyond that. Then you have 7.5, which has support until 2024, and then there will be a new release in 21-22 running the latest release of Java, and would support until around 2030. And then obviously, as you want to consider whether or not you want to run this in CPI or not. I'd say at the moment, you obviously have the CPI and able to run it on premise or on the PO system, but I think, obviously depending on the scenario, if you have scenarios that involve CCPPM or BPMN, it may be worth considering, do we want to do that in CPI? I'd say normal message processing, we are not really there yet. Maybe in the course of 2020 it will be more reliable and have all the functionality that the PI has. But until then, I still think you need to go on a PI part. If we do talk about upgrade versus migration, so upgrade is obviously, it's probably the fastest thing you can do. What you need to do is you just install the latest support package, and suddenly you're magically on the latest release. The biggest challenge here is that you need to do a big go live, and once you flip the switch, install the new patches, then you are live with it, and you don't really have a fallback plan. So the fallback plan will be to restart the old backup and run it from there until you get this fixed. So you need to have really good testing in place before you can do that, and make sure that nothing fails outside of the scope that you could that you can run on. Once you have upgraded, you also need to do a stack split if you have the ABAP stack, and then you can delete the ABAP stack once you have migrated all functionality to the Java only stack. But I think the biggest challenge is that you have just one go live, and that everything needs to be at that point in time. Otherwise, it's pretty difficult to handle it. And no fallback. Anything else that you want to do is challenging there. Then the other option is to do a migration, and you to migrate to a new landscape. you install a new landscape and then you move one interface at the time to this new system, and that means you can actually go live with one interface at the time, so that is a little less risky. It will just be one thing that fails at any point in time, and once you have installed it, you'd figure out how does this occur and what's going on in that perspective. Some of the problems, and if you have any other big challenge about doing either a migration or an upgrade, is that for this to work, you need to have good testing in place, and then you need somehow to be able to coordinate this with everybody involved in the integration platform. And with the number of projects going on, obviously you can make some of the new development in a CPI world, but if you got change requests and everything like that needs to go on, it's difficult to shut down development for 3 to 6 months to do a migration or an upgrade. So it's a little of a challenge, and you can then obviously outsource it and get someone else to do it. But I think also something about some of the resources, you need some qualified that are actually able to help you in that case. And then as you're changing versions, and it obviously depends a lot about what kind of changes you are having. So at one customer we had, so between our service packs of 731 or patches, we had seen that there were changes in the way the message mappings was functioning, and because we were maybe a little to the edge of what is really possible in that perspective, and what you should be doing and what you could do, there were some things that were changing us on support packages, and we've only found out them through random testing that we did, or at one case they found out in production where a document suddenly didn't work. So that was why you need a good way of running these tests. And obviously, if you are just doing like standard mappings, not that complicated if statements, then the risk is probably a lot less, but I don't know. And then I guess another challenge is how do you actually find a good architecture, how you're able to handle this in a good way. And if you have got other, you can put them into the chat. I would appreciate that. I've created a list of some of my migration resources that you can check out. And yeah, I guess I'm not that much into CPI at that point in time, because I think, for at least for the message processing, it may not really be there. If you have sync processes or something like that, CPI may be a little easier to use and have the flexibility that you need. But it's definitely worth considering, do we want to migrate to CPI yet? And where are the gaps that we need for it to work before we can really move there. And then obviously if you have a lot of on-premise thing, it doesn't really make sense to send it via cloud and back again. Many organizations, and I guess that is why you at least are here, need to migrate, and that you need to have the system updated to be able to get support. You want to leverage the latest functionality, and there is some things that is easier in 7.5 that has been approved and that's being changed on it. And the IFG survey was just released a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that it said was I think it was like 30% or something like that, 35% was on 7.5, some on CPI, and then you had quite a large percentage of customers still on the older releases that was out of support. But it's a laborious process, and that's probably why you want to migrate it. And then it's here the example, and I guess It probably could relate to a lot of your organizations as well, because that's a lot of things that's going on. So Paw Patrol, children's cartoon, and yeah, I was watching it yesterday with my son when he was home sick, and he really enjoys it. You have I don't know, 6 puppies that are then running around and saving the city, and they have these automated or dog sheds that can transform into cars that can fix things. But I think that the metaphor about what that is also really applies to any integration department. So they have some highly critical B2B interfaces. They have the one that they are going to order dog ice cream, which is apparently a big thing, and then they need to order supply parts to their vehicles, and obviously that requires some maintenance and stuff like that. And in most of these episodes, they have like maximum 3 minutes before something breaks in the city of Adventure Bay. And yeah, I think that's also relate to a lot of you guys working out in the real world, that sometimes things is not really working. You get called into a meeting, or have a support incident that needs to be fixed before it even occurs. So you don't really have the time to focus on these things. And business obviously want to be able to deliver new integrations, and the same here. They want to be able to help all the citizens of Adventure Bay. They have PI 731. They need to migrate operations next year, but they need somehow to balance this thing about saving the city, maintaining all the vehicles, be dogs and learn what they do, and then they need to do this migration. So that's pretty complicated. Same as if you're working as an architect or developer in an organization, you have a bunch of projects that you need to be involved in and figure out how do we actually do this. You can obviously outsource it to the cats, and they are the bad guys in some perspective. They also have some cool gadgets, but most of the time they're just making a mess of things. And that's something you need to balance. How much do we actually outsource this? Because it is not really obviously critical to your business, or it's not a skill that you need to learn to do migration, because it's not, once you have done the migration, I guess for the next release it will just be an upgrade, or at a later point a migration to 731 or to CPI. So if you can outsource it, it makes a lot of sense, because that is, the best part you can do with that. Why Paw Patrol need an automated tool? It's because they only got these 3-minute intervals from time to time, and they want to be able to fix the problems in that period of time. And then once they get back, they want to know where we are, be able to manage the process, and be able to actually follow along in it. They want to speed up the migration and lower the cost. They want to understand what the current status of the project without having to do a lot of studying of what's going on. They also, I guess, a lot of customers have a lot of software components that has not really been used for a period of time, and that you have created for some demo purpose but not really used, and then it just stands up. And now if you're doing a migration, it is a good time to figure out what these components are and not migrate them. And then they want to manage the project risk and the predictability of this thing. So that was a little about why we need to migrate, what's going on. Then I'll just explain what the tool we have done works, and I guess if you're doing it the manual way, it was also the same way you want to do that. Yes. Any questions before we get started? Okay. All right. Let me just get started then. Cool. So the way we're seeing a landscape is the following. We have two system landscape. We have the old system, and right now we're just saying that there is 2 or 3 tier landscape, and obviously it could be 4 if that make more sense for you, or that's what you have in the landscape. We don't count sandbox because you don't really want to do a migration to the sandbox system in any way. And then you have installed the new system that you want to migrate all the content to. And one of the important features is that you need to be able to, you have two kind of objects. You have the repository objects, message mapping interface interfaces, and then you have the directory, the communication channels, the icons, those kind of things. And what you need to do is obviously copy them to the new development system. But then once you're configuring communication channel, you don't want to go in and figure out how do we specify the communication channel on the new system so it matches what we had on the old system. Because path, stuff like that, username, password, you need to keep them and so be sure that they work in the new environment. So that is what we want to do. So we'll create 3 landscapes, one for the old system, one for the new system, and then we'll create one that handles our migrations. Then we have 2 processes in place. The first one is just doing the transport from the old system to the new one. That's our migration, and this will create test data on the old system. Figaf started out doing PI testing and have a good platform that really makes testing easier. Then we created a lot of extra tools to manage this testing, and suddenly we had a change management tool that's pretty cool. So testing is obviously important in this, and it's a part of the migration process that's also managed with this tool. Then once you've done that, we'll create the test cases and ensure they give success. We will copy all the repository content over, copy all the directory content over, and then we'll migrate the ICO to the dev system. So that is the third part of the process about the migration to the old new system. Next part is the development, or that will be like the propagation through the new landscape. Here we will test on the new development system. We'll make some modification if we need to. We will create a new transport and approve it. We'll configure it in QA, run test in QA, and configure it in production. In our landscape, we just have 2 dev and QA, or dev and production, so we don't have the secondary step, but I hope you will be able to see what this works like. For repository content, we have the way we have done it is that Figoratti will handle this transport, and the way it works, it will use the file-based transport, so it will log onto the system, use the file-based transport to create a TBZ file, save it into its database, and then once it has there, it's able to import that on the new system. For directory, we are also using the tool here. We're able to copy it will copy using the directory API, and later we'll also be able to create the iFlows and manage those. Let's see. And then we have we'll transport via directory API, so that means we can actually create the objects correct and handle them that way. Good. So let's see how this will go, and if we are able to make this so Paw Patrol will be able to save the city and do migrations at the same time. So we'll create a new release, and a release. So we created a release, and it's just a way of managing bigger integration projects, and what you can assign to this is a landscape and a bunch of tickets. And tickets could be in a normal world or at a later stage when you would be using the Figaf tool as a DevOps tool. a way just to manage projects. So here you could actually also create it as a development object or as a SuccessFactors HR implementation, and then all tickets involving that will be placed there. So we'll create a new release. Wave 1, the default assignee is admin. It's a migration effort, and then we need to specify the old PI and the not that one, migration. Here we want to have the integrated transport management, so it's this one, and then we have the migration path that we want to use, so that will be this one. So now we've created this. So it stopped, or can everybody else see? Let's see. Can you see the screen now? Okay, so that was pretty cool. Glad you could see me instead of the screen. But I hope you can see it now. Cool. Yes, not that smart. Oh well. So what we'll do is we have two views. We have integration scenario, and now, so we've just created the ticket. We have selected the different landscapes, and we can then assign some scenarios. We can assign if we have test cases already, and the idea is then we will select two of our development artifacts or icons, and one of them has test cases on. It will create one ticket per scenario. That's pretty good, and it's just a way that you can group this and run it. So now we can see we got these test cases. We can see we have a ticket here, and a ticket is just a collection of what has been changed in this. So here we can see we got all the directory objects. We can see we got some test cases on this, and if we look up open our test suite, it will then create a virtual test suite for this specific test case. We can then run things here. We'll just need to run on the right system. And so the way we're testing is normally we're adding module in the beginning and the end of the processing chain. It will then send the messages through, and once you have sent it through, you will be able to see. So a new productive system, for instance, you would add this module. It will then say copy the next 5 messages coming on this specific interface. These will be saved in the Figaf application. You can then resend these on your development system, and then you'll get an output. And if this output is correct, you will then be able to see what is going on. Let's just see what the results are. So here we are getting success. It is possible to go in and view the differences, and we can see we have added ignore element on this specific place. So yes, so there's a lot more in what we can do with testing, and be sure that what we have created is successful. So we have now created our test cases. We can then say it's prepared, and we want to move more of this functionality out to the release wave. So you can see it here. Figaf ERT is the name of the tool, and you can find it at figaf/IRT. And what you'll then do is I will need to switch to tickets perspective. Most of the time you would be in this ticket perspective where you can see what's going on. We'll then move to the development. And in our development, we can select the 2 interfaces that we have going here. We can then start transport, and then it will go log onto the system, start creating transport for all these objects. So it'll create repository transport and directory transport of these different kind of things. And it does take a little while on this system, most likely because it's running on a low-powered Amazon service with bandwidth issues or something like that. So that's why it takes a little while. When we're doing it on the local system, it performs a lot better. But yeah, with this, it'll then create 2 transports that you can then, or 3 transports that we can then approve and migrate into the new system. And here it's always interesting if it will actually create this or not. For some of the other long-running processes, we have an async screen that will give you information, but that was not ready yet. We wanted to get the function done and enabling you to do transports in this this new way. If there's any questions, you can put them into the chat. Good. So now we got the transports created. We can go look at the transports that has been created. So we got 79. So let's just take this one. What we can then do is we can just import it on the new system. And we then need to import all of them normally. And I think this is like 40 seconds it will take on this system. But here we're just importing this directory object. Not sure if we can do multiple at the same time. And we'll see if we can. Let's wait. And yeah, my goal is also to move this functionality to the overview screen, so you can do all this transport in just one go. So let's see, still not there. For directory or repository transport, it's obviously a little different. The thing is, once we are creating channels here, we do have a different way or these have different names. So we have the option to do mapping of system names, parties. We also have the option to, so here you can go and specify what are the new hosts that it should use on the target system, what are the password. We're also able to fetch password if in some scenario if it's an older system that you have. And with that, you have one place where you get all the information required for migration or for this import. So users do not need access to PI, for instance, on your QA or production system, because it's all handled with this specific configuration. So now we're doing the other software component. Hopefully this is a little faster. And now we are just synchronizing, and we then will do our directory. And I think this is also taking a little time. And we have this migrate password button that will take the password from the old system, copy them into the new system. For some, at some point in time, at least on the 7.5 system, SP 15, we cannot see the password with that approach that we're using, but on our older 7.3 system or 7.31 system we can see it. So yes. Good. So now it's all has been imported, and that means that we can go back to our release, say, okay, now we have moved everything. So this was the drawing I was showing before that you did not see. Now we moved everything from the old system to the new system. And we'll go back to our Power Patrol. We will then say, okay, we have selected this. We'll say finish transport. Everything looks okay. We then have 2 migrated tickets. What we can then do is we can copy the configuration, and this will then copy passwords or copy URLs from QA to the same communication channel in the new system. We can see we got 12 done there. We will then create development ticket, and then we can start developing in a move in this this flow. With this, we have the option we can start our transport again. So let me just start that transport, and that will obviously take a little while. So in the meantime, we duplicate transport. We may be able to go in. So we'll select our tickets perspective. We will have the development tickets, this one. And in here we have our test cases, so we can open our test suite. We can see we got 2 test messages here, and then we can run it on our DI3 system. And this will then send these messages through on the DI3 system. And hopefully once it has done that, we will get a testing result here that says everything is successful. So we can see it's compare successful, everything is good, people are happy. So transport is still in progress. So if we look at the transport, then not, so it will create it all in one go. So now we have created our transports, and we can see this. It's the same transport that it's creating, because you obviously in some cases want to do some changes on the objects, making modifications, so it works a little differently. And then we just import this. In this environment, we have approval, and with that, you would send it to an approver that can then approve or reject this specific message. And the benefit of that is that you get more control about what is being processed, because if you're using CTS Plus or file import export, you don't really have a good idea about what's being changed. For instance, if I go here, I can go check my communication channel for HTTP orders. So here's the transport that we have from this system to our production, I think it is, whatever we're mimicking. And then in here, we can see we haven't configured anything yet. And what we can then see is that the path is now calling dev orders on our dev system and prod orders. And this value has been copied from the old system. So we don't need to go in and do that manually. And we'll also send this to approval. If these were already imported on the system, we also had a way to simulate what will be changed if we import this on that specific system. We could see the data that's being imported, so I'll also send it to approval. And then it's all about just going through, waiting for approval, approve. If you reject it, it will obviously go back to and then the full block will be rejected. So in the landscape, I'm also the user I've logged into as also approver. You can set up that it's only 3 or specific users that are actually able to approve, and that will give you some more flexibility in approving these changes in the landscape. So and then it's just about importing this on production, and then you're good to go. Any questions on this demo? You can put them into the chat. So here we can see it is performing noticeably faster because we're running on the same server and close proximity. And then the last one. Yes. So this taking a little longer. So that, I don't know how that was, maybe a little longer than 15 minutes. But we were able to show all these things, being able to configure everything that was going on in this progress. And yeah. So these were the slides. I'll send out the slides afterwards also. If you have Seaburger, we also have a tool that enables you to take a Seaburger message mapping, convert it to a B2B mapping, pretty simple, and that is something that our customers is using to make the migration between Seaburger and B2B a little easier and also with less risk. It's licensed per number of mappings that you're doing. But it's a pretty manual tool. Some of the extra options that we are considering and depending on customer requirements is we'll see if these becomes relevant, is a conversion with the Seaburger or the adapters to the new SAP adapter, Seaburger 997 to EDI separator. If we want to integrate the Seaburger migration component, so you at a higher level can just say, this is the old service interface with this this EDIFACT X12 Tradercom message. This is the new one, and then it will just do magic, and it will convert all of the message mappings and all the relevant objects. So that would be something that we also could add into this. If there's migration from older than 731 system, that is also something that we need to consider. We haven't done that much on those systems, so it will be interesting to see if we could, if it will work or not. And then if there's custom migrations or tools or relevance, we could also figure out if that would be something we can do some custom development on. The license, so we are working on creating a license that is based on the number of ICOs that you migrate with the tool. So every time you're creating a new license or new migration, it will just count, and then it will cost 200-300 euros, including testing, transport, and configuration. And I think that is a pretty good value compared to what a normal migration will take per interface, and managing testing and running all these things together. So I think that will speed up some of the processing. And then obviously we do hope that you would be using the tool afterwards, because all of this change management, processing, documentation is also something that the tool is offering, the Figaf tool that enables you to handle these things. Installation. So the Figaf tool comes with a built-in database. You can start it on your laptop and get started in like 10 minutes. We do recommend, so if you just want to try it out and see what it can do, you can start in like 10 minutes. You just need to go into your different to the agent configuration, and then you just need to add what are the different components that we have, or what's the different PI systems that we have, and it will take you 10 minutes to get started. The best approach is to install the Figaf module on each PO system. It takes probably 10 minutes to install it on the system, and I guess on the maybe less if you have done it a few times. but it's a simple SCA. It contains an adapter module, a web service, or 2 web services, something like that. And then you just need to go in and secure it. We also have 4 databases that we can run on. Postgres, so obviously you don't want to run this on a laptop, and the built-in database is not that stable, but for proof of concept, checking out what it works like, it's okay. For real use cases, we run on 4 databases: Postgres as a free one, Microsoft DB2, and Oracle as the paid ones. And we got customers on those 4 platforms. And yeah, you can download it at figaf.com/IRT.